Our first speaker this morning is Rachael Lindsey. Rachael is Director of Science and Stewardship at Hill Country Conservancy. She has 20 years of ecological and land protection expertise, and throughout her career, she has prioritized connecting people and communities to nature. So please give me a round of applause for Rachael.
I should have practiced with this little thing beforehand, maybe. Okay, so the Hill Country, you guys have seen some maps yesterday and heard people talk about the Hill Country. I wasn't born here, but I got here as fast as I could. The most remarkable place to be able to live and enjoy the resources. You saw some maps of the Hill Country and ecoregions. This shows the green is the Balcones Canyonlands ecoregion, stretching from Williamson County north of Austin, all the way down through Austin, San Marcos, New Braunfels, San Antonio, and out west, Vanderpool, Medina, and those areas deeply forested and dissected by water into the limestone that underlays that region. The blue region, you can see all those rivers and streams too. I like to play with GIS. All those streams and rivers and canyons that come down in the Hill Country. It's just a miraculous place to collect rainwater and store it for us below ground. That blue region is the Edwards Plateau woodlands, and the peachy yellow region, I guess it's not yellow, peachy, is the Llano Uplift. And a lot of the work that I do really focuses on that Balcones Canyonlands region, but the principles are applicable to all the regions of the world, maybe. So one of the things to think about stewardship and thinking about sustainability and resilience is who are we managing for and who are we thinking about? I really like the principles of 7 generations, thinking 7 generations in the future. I often think about what are the things that I wish 7 generations ago would have done for us, and how do we make sure that 7 generations from now, those people are thankful that we existed in this space together and we were unified over a dream for them. We do not inherit the earth from our ancestors, we borrow it from our children. Texas is overwhelmingly privately owned, 95% privately owned. So it's not a question of where we're working so much as who we're working with as well. So we, the people in this room, are the ones making the decisions and rising to this challenge, this opportunity of a window where we can change the future, or we can allow this opportunity to pass and have future generations try and overcome it themselves. We're experiencing multiple extremes in weather patterns, and we also have multiple other exacerbating threats in the Hill Country and worldwide. Temperature, droughts and heat waves, winter ice storms, exceptional freezes, which has been very unexpected, at least from my point of view. Seasonal monsoons in the spring and the fall. We can get torrential rainfall, flooding, tornadoes, hailstorms, and all of these are coming with increased frequency and also extremity, intensity of those weather events. This complicates what we're doing. If you think back to that graph that Steve showed yesterday, it's complicated, the work that we're doing, and being able to think about the hill country for sustainability and resilience. And we have all these other exacerbating threats like development and overharvesting groundwater and pollution, historic land degradation, continuous overgrazing, invasive species, changes to our growing seasons of our plants because of all these weather events. There's that graph that Steve had, all these interesting interactions. I did take a screenshot while Steve was talking. How not just the ecology interacts with each other, how humans are interacting with that, how globally we're impacting what's happening here in the hill country at the very local scale. Landowners themselves are impacted by what's happening globally right now because of humans, but also we are making changes ourselves locally that are impacting globally what's happening. So connecting all these different things and not being overwhelmed by it. And the thing that we need right now is vision. So my call to all of you today is to imagine a dream of what you want the hill country to be 7 generations from now. This is a quote from Suzanne Simard. Plants are attuned to one another's strengths and weaknesses, elegantly giving and taking to attain exquisite balance. There is grace in complexity, in actions cohering, in sum totals. We don't have to do this alone. It's not up to any one of us individually. Our sum total of our work is more than any of us could ever accomplish on our own. And the complexity is actually a really beautiful gift for us to partake in and be a part of as humans, as life on this earth. I do like to play with GIS, so last night as I was refining this talk, I was thinking about how many private landowners there are to work with. That pink outline is the Balcones Canyonlands ecoregion. And the gray lines are parcels. I don't know how obvious that is to y'all with the lighting. But as you get further west, you can see those parcels open up quite a bit, and you can see those lines. But when you're further east, close to Austin and San Antonio and all the cities in I-35, those lines just become one big gray blur. This is missing Kerr County. I don't have their parcel data. I don't know why, but almost 600,000 parcels in this ecoregion. We're talking about 4 million acres, which is about the size of Hawaii. And when you think about that little island and how they can manage that island in an ocean, within an ocean, so a true island, it gives me a lot of perspective for how we can manage this little island within an ocean of different habitat and within an ocean of different things happening. The green on this map is already protected lands. So that's pretty exciting. We've already done a lot of work. We have about 500,000 acres, a little over 500,000 acres protected in the hill country, which is 17 counties. According to some resource, hill country is arguable, colloquial. So when we're thinking about how to do this, sustainability and resilience, and what our stewardship would be for the hill country, when we're dreaming this dream, we're thinking on that 7 generations time frame. We have to collaborate. We can't do this alone. We're thinking about sustainability and resilience in the future. How do we do land stewardship and management to get towards those goals? What's the community impact? How is the community involved in this work? And we have to have a landscape and regional vision, even though we're working at the parcel level with private landowners. The good news is some of this work has already been done. The Texas Hill Country Conservation Network is a collaboration between over 50 different conservation organizations in the hill country, and last year we produced the Land, Water, Sky, and Natural Infrastructure Plan. There's some core messages on there. The website is up there on the top, but also thanks to all my friends yesterday, I realized I needed a QR code. This will take you right to that website. And the Natural Infrastructure Plan is the first thing on that page. There's also a State of the Hill Country report, which provides 8 key metrics for measuring our success in the Hill Country and conservation. And there's a water and equity report that looks at the equitability and the access to fresh water across the Hill Country with different demographics. The really great news is there's overwhelming support for conservation in the Hill Country from the general public. And we have noticed that everybody knows fresh water is the key to the Hill Country and our most precious natural resource. The Natural Infrastructure Plan includes this really cool graphic on what natural infrastructure is. If you've never heard that term before, there's a lot of different information in the plan that gives us common language as conservation professionals and landowners and stewards of the land. Natural infrastructure is similarly needed and necessary for human populations as gray infrastructure, which would be buildings and houses and roads, pipelines, electric lines. Natural infrastructure are all the natural resources that provide us similar benefits, and nature does this work for us for free. So all we have to do is recognize it, value it, maintain it, optimize it. How cool would that be? If you want to read all these things, I encourage you to go check out the Natural Infrastructure Plan. I don't think we'll go through everything today, but it's laid out in multiple different ways where you can see the different interactions of all these benefits of natural infrastructure. And this is one of my favorite graphs, though it's actually quite clear up there. I like it. You'll see there's 4 different categories of natural infrastructure benefits: the social benefits, the health benefits, the economic benefits, which are really huge, estimates of $629 per acre for working lands in Texas, which is more than $37 billion a year in natural infrastructure benefits that we receive. And of course, the environmental benefits. And at the nexus of everything right there in the middle, protects and provides clean and abundant water. Part of the goal of the Natural Infrastructure Plan was to create a prioritization map of critical areas. And there was a survey that went out to people in the Hill Country that encouraged responses to value and document how we prioritize the different natural resources that we have. Water overwhelmingly was number 1 in that, both water quantity and water quality. Of course, that's the thing that draws us all to the beauty of the Hill Country and the recreation here, but also that we have water at our taps when we turn it on. So the dark green is high priorities. Of course, that follows streams a lot of times. It follows those ravines. It's also taking into account wildlife habitat and connectivity, already protected lands, being sure that we have the resilience in the Hill Country, which if you haven't checked out the Nature Conservancy's Resilient and Connected Lands database, highly encourage you to play with that if you're into maps and adding different layers. I've got the QR code again, just in case that map enticed you into looking at the plan. There's also county by county maps within the plan where you can look at each of those 17 counties that are included in this plan and see the breakdown of those critical lands, but also critical demographics on those counties. And the goal of this was to be able to take this to counties and work with those counties to do protection in their own areas and start to see how important this work is, but also a measure of our success. And this leads us to where do we prioritize protection, and what are the things that we value? Do we decide now that protecting land is our most important endeavor, and is that enough? And I would challenge us to recognize that protecting land does nothing for places like Jacob's Well that already runs dry in the summers. These droughts and heat waves are already drying up our springs. And so protection alone is not enough. We have to think about our stewardship and management and how we optimize our natural resources. There's also a lot to think about in how we consume water and where we can consume less of our fresh water, especially from groundwater resources. This is Robin Wall Kimmerer, who wrote Braiding Sweetgrass. We need acts of restoration, not only for polluted waters and degraded lands, but also for our relationship to the world. We need to restore honor to the way that we live so that when we walk through the world, we don't have to avert our eyes with shame, so that we can hold our heads up high and receive the respectful acknowledgement of the rest of the earth's beings. Restoration is a complicated word, and a lot of times people get hung up in what are we restoring to. Do we go back to 150 years ago, 500 years ago, 1,000 years ago, 10,000 years ago? When is too far? When is too close? Are we only thinking about the 1940s? And I try to focus my work on the function of the environment, restoring, and sometimes I replace that word with optimizing or maximizing function. How can we get the most function out of our natural systems? So thinking about the hydrologic cycle in the hill country, we have a rainwater refinery here. Rain falls on the hill country. It's infiltrated into the ground, and through recharge features, it's stored underground. And this all happens for free. So how can we work with our stewardship and management on private lands to maximize and optimize this cycle so that we're getting the most rainfall possible collected and stored underground? The carbon cycle is also important here. Carbon sequestration is a big buzzword with changing climate and the amount of carbon in our atmosphere. Is our management maximizing carbon sequestration? Are we releasing more carbon into the atmosphere? Thinking about 7 generations from now, what impact does the work that we do have on the future of the hill country? And how do these different cycles work together? What do all those interactions look like? What's the web of this carbon cycle with the water cycle, with healthy soils and mycorrhizae? How do we manage our land to maximize all these benefits that happen from it and to grow productivity rather than consuming that productivity and moving it elsewhere? These are big, hairy graphics with lots of words, but the point is it's complicated, and these ecological factors interact with each other in ways that we don't understand yet. Thinking about how we manage our land in ways that produces a future benefit that couldn't have been achieved without our foresight. How the trees interact with rainfall, how the vegetation interacts, how our soils are built, how those soils are protected, especially torrential rainfall, but also in summer heat waves and drought, how we're making sure that those soils are productive and active and living. Can we bring in rainstorms and precipitation with our land management? There's a lot of anecdotal evidence in the hill country, but there's a lot of research worldwide that the biotic pump is real and that vegetation can actually create rainstorms and perpetuate rainstorms. And that evapotranspiration is one of the things that puts moisture into the air so that we get more constant rainstorms and we're able to absorb torrential rainfall and also have moisture during the droughty times. Historically, in the hill country, we know that we had clear cutting. It's debatable how much land that was on or where that happened in particular, but there was an entire culture of cedar choppers. Lisa gave us a great overview of the early explorers and the things that they documented about this region. And what we know is that when we clear cut trees on slopes, those loose, fragile soils are eroded downhill and downstream in torrential rainfall. And we had that happen all across at least the Balcones Canyon lands, possibly in a lot of other areas in the hill country as well. So thinking about our management and how we restore that protection, the building of the soils, the protection of those fragile soils, grow our slopes to be able to absorb rainfall. We're underlain by caves. If you've heard water is the gold of the future, then the hill country is a gold mine. Are we going to deplete it, or are we going to optimize it? More playing with maps. This is the western part of the Balcones Canyon lands. The mycelium network creates connections between plants and trees that enable ecosystems to flourish as symbiotic communities. Nothing lives alone in nature, and communities are more likely to survive than individuals. What a beautiful inspirational model for how human beings might live in a shared economy based not on greed, but on nurturing relationships and mutual cooperation. We can do management that optimizes our ecological function. Those functions are on the left. Our values are on the right. Water, 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 wildlife, connectivity, recreation, aesthetic beauty. When we have a drop of rainfall, do we want it to be caught and absorbed and infiltrated? Do we want it to be shed from the ground? This is a little bit of cheating. This is a goat farm. Hotter, drier, out in the openings, no canopy cover, little capacity to buffer wind energy or precipitation. There's an increase in runoff when you don't have all the absorptive vegetation, a decrease in the buildup of soil and organic matter and minerals. Or back there in the forest in the background, where would you rather be in July? I would much prefer the forest canopy, cooler, wetter, buffers wind energy, buffers precipitation. There's a decrease in runoff and an increase in soil, organic matter, and minerals. This is the San Saba River, one of the most endangered rivers in the United States because of agricultural use of that water. There's freshwater mussels that occur here that are extremely rare and unique. Dr. Seuss is one of my favorites. Unless someone like you cares a whole awful lot, nothing's going to get better. It's not. So let's dream a dream of the hill country. Fresh water flowing through limestone bones, bare fingers in rich soil, abundant wildlife and plants, scenic views. That's Austin in the background. Isn't it amazing that there's still this much open space? Epic places. Fall colors. We do have a little tiny bit. Twisted roots and swimming holes. Idyllic getaways. This is my favorite riding spot. A thriving economy. Expansive protection and stewardship. connection, community, collaboration. I like to think that this little bee mimicking fly is dreaming his dream of the hill country. What's your dream? I'm done. Do we have time for questions? Yeah? Or tell me your dream. I love to hear dreams. Kate. I start the conversation talking to the vegetation. I mostly like to meet landowners out on the land, and we listen to what the vegetation tells us. We imagine rainfall. Sometimes we don't have to imagine. That's really great. How the rainfall is falling through plants. We talk about summer heat and drought and what that looks like in different areas of the land. We look at the soil and dig in the soil and pull soil up and talk about how that's different in different places. We look at how the rain is running across the land, and I ask lots of questions. What does this look like over the course of your lifetime? What do you remember? What have you seen? What do you have in your head as the way that you should manage your land? And how do those things incorporate with what we need right now? It's always a conversation, and I'm always learning things from the landowners. Awesome.